always good to see you. Are you surprised when you heard this verdict?
I was a little surprised. I did think that she put on a good case. She had multiple witnesses who supported what she was saying, and Trump's team did not put on a witness. He did have the right to testify and decided not to. So I think the jury looked at all of the evidence and came to the right conclusion, but I still think it was a bit surprising because it is Donald Trump.
And how about the speed at which they came to that verdict?
It was very quick. We've seen a couple of very fast decisions in the Southern District recently, and this is one of them. We saw with the Ed Sheeran case that case was also decided quickly. I think juries are really smart. They see the information, they look at the evidence, they consider it, and they take a consensus. And it's not a lot of people, 6 to 7 people. They have to convince each other, and once they come to a consensus, and it has to be unanimous, then they have a verdict, and no reason to belabor the issue, frankly.
Now, E Jean Carroll had accused Trump of rape. In this case, the verdict was sexual assault, not rape. What does that mean?
It's interesting because I think the jury picked apart what it was that she was claiming. There's a legal definition in New York for rape and for sexual assault, and they came to the conclusion that technically it wasn't a rape, but they did come to the conclusion that she sexually assaulted. And I think that, if they came to the conclusion that she was sexually assaulted, then they believed her, and they must have explained to themselves, and this is an assumption on my part, that maybe she thought it was rape, but that technically it was not a rape, it was a battery, it was a sexual assault. So they believed that. And then, of course, the defamation came after that.
All right, let me ask you about burden of proof here, very much in layman's terms, Terri, if you can. This was a civil case, not a criminal case. And I just want to get your sense of how that sort of changes the threshold of proof needed for a jury to decide its verdict. We know in a criminal case, it's proof beyond a reasonable doubt. We've heard that so many times. But in a civil case, it's a little different.
That's right. It's the preponderance of the evidence, the greater weight of the evidence. So just tipping that scale ever so slightly, and that's what happened here. It's much easier to prove the case when you don't have to do it beyond a reasonable doubt. And I think the jury had plenty of evidence to convince them that this is exactly what happened. And I do think it hurt his case not to have any witnesses on the stand. I mean, I suppose he could have put some experts up, or perhaps someone to say that it wasn't him, but he put nothing up. And I think the weight of the evidence, the preponderance of that evidence, was in favor of E. Jean Carroll. And that's why they came to that conclusion. And, in a civil case, he can deny and not testify, but that can be used against him. So if he doesn't get up on that stand, the jury can infer whatever they want, and they can use it against him. And that probably didn't help either, although they did see some deposition testimony, and he had some inconsistencies there.
Yeah, speaking of which, he sat for that deposition with lawyers for Carroll last fall. We want to play just a little bit of it now for our viewers to listen to. This was a long and lengthy deposition in which he went after Carroll's lawyers. They're sitting right in front of him, and he went after them. But there's a couple of questions here, and I want to get your reaction. We're going to play that now.
In this video, I just start kissing them. It's like a magnet, just kiss. I don't even wait. And when you're a star, they let you do it. You can do anything. Grab them by the you can do anything. That's what you said, correct?
Well, historically, that's true with stars.
It's true with stars that they can grab women by the
Well, that's what it's. If you look over the last million years, I guess that's been largely true. Not always, but largely true. Unfortunately or fortunately.
And you consider yourself to be a star?
I think you can say that, yeah.
So that deposition from October of last year, of course, in reference to the infamous Access Hollywood tape where Trump was caught on tape saying a number of those things. Your read on how that deposition would have played for a jury?
Well, I think he comes across there as very arrogant. He considers himself, a star, and he thinks that it's commonplace to be able to put your hands on someone without their consent. And something like that would be very damaging. It is in fact, the definition of what a sexual assault is when you are placing your hands and you are touching and you are doing that without the consent of the other party. So that's very damaging.
Do you think he should have testified? I mean, in retrospect now, or do you think that would have been a catastrophe?
I think it would have been a catastrophe. I think he would have been under attack. But I do think he should have put some sort of case on. The only thing that jury heard was the argument of his attorneys, and they argued that she was lying. And she had a couple of witnesses who said that she told them after it happened that it happened. And also, there were two witnesses who testified that he sexually assaulted them as well. So, with that in mind, I do think it would have helped to put someone up. But I don't think it would have helped if he had gotten on that stand.
Trump now saying, Terry, there's really no way he can get a fair trial in New York City because he's unpopular there. Is that a fair argument?
Well, I think it's a decent argument. They tried to get that case moved. I think they wanted to go to Staten Island. I do think that juries in New York do have a certain bend, so to speak, and that they are leaning more left than right, and that they might not be as conservative as he may want them to be. I mean, it is the place where ultimately he left to go to Florida. I think he feels as though the jury pool is tainted, and it's an argument to be made. Whether or not that actually happened, I do not know. I think that the jury all said that they could be fair, they could listen to the evidence, they could apply the law that the judge gave them. So I'm hoping that that jury did exactly that, and they didn't bring anything from the outside. This should not have been decided by politics. Hopefully, it was decided by the evidence that was set forth in that trial.
Okay, now the team on Trump promising an immediate appeal, him and his lawyers, what does that mean, Terry?
I think it means that E Jean Carroll is not going to see that money for quite some time. And I think they're going to extend the length of that appeal for as long as they can. And I think from an evidentiary standpoint, they probably will argue that having those two witnesses who were claiming that they were also sexually assaulted was less probative and more prejudicial. But I think Judge Kaplan did a very good job at looking at that and carefully outlining in his decision why this was acceptable in a civil case. Here in New York, you can admit that type of evidence, and he did think it was probative. And so I don't think they'll prevail on that, but that's definitely going to be one of the grounds they're going to try to make.
How long do you think this could play out?
Oh, I think it could go for years, at least, 18 months. I definitely think, these things take time, and, they have backup in the courts, and they can make motions. And so an appeal process can take some time. And I think that's one of their goals, is to have this take time. And don't forget, the political process here, as far as his running for office. He's already indicated that he's going to do that. And I think his hope is that he'll be in office before any of this happens. And frankly, that would stay the appeal probably if he were elected president.
Hey, one final question. This is one verdict. Other legal cases moving against him. They're moving forward. How much could all of this be weighing on Trump, as, of course, we know he's running for the White House again?
Well, from a financial standpoint, I am certain that it is weighing on him. It's not cheap to have all of these lawyers defending all of these cases in various jurisdictions. And you mentioned that he does have criminal actions pending, New York, D.C., and Georgia. That is going to weigh on him financially. And I think it's going to weigh on him emotionally and mentally as well. He's got to think about the defenses in these cases, and that's going to take away from how he could go to different appearances. As a matter of fact, I think it has already interfered with some of his planned appearances. So it's going to weigh heavily on him.
Terri Austin, legal analyst, joining us from New York City tonight. Wonderful to have you, Terri. Great conversation. Much appreciated.
Thanks, Todd. Anytime.